In May of 1997, I spent 7 days and nights on Horn Island with a group of artists from the Memphis College of Art. In 1998, I returned, knowing that I had more to see and experience. This is the story of those journeys.
I think it was really a spiritual experience. Made you put everything aside and just focus on what was there.
Being around 30 artists, especially young artists, to me is one of the greatest learning experiences that anyone could have.
It's more than just the nature aspect of it. It's almost like a religious experience as far as the meditation and the peaceful quality.
It forces you to let go of everything, to not have to control everything in your life.
Philosophers through the years have never been able to define that which is art, which is the art world. And it's one of the only ways to communicate that has never disappeared and will never disappear. And that everyone can understand no matter what language you speak, where you're from, and it's vital.
Just the pattern that the waves make with seaweed or whatever they happen to drag up on the shore, and alligator footprints, and sometimes some of the seagrass or the sea oats make a pattern in the sand when the wind blows. Kind of circular pattern. It's kind of neat.
So I go down there and I guess I just kind of renew myself. I soak up the environment. I thoroughly enjoy that, and then I try to bring some of that back into my painting.
You really are alone, and you have to get over the what ifs very quickly. You can't deal with that. You have to deal with what comes. And such is life.
You get you back in touch with your soul, I think. Maybe that's the way to put it. The city has a way of stealing your soul, and the country gives it back to you. Or partially, anyways. You get you a little peek of what you're missing. You know?
So the main thing for me going back is just some kind of magical pull that it has for me.
Horn Island lies 15 miles off the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It is one of many barrier islands that stretch from Florida to Texas along the Gulf of Mexico. It is about 15 miles long and a half-mile wide. There is no electricity or running water. There are forests, lagoons, vast stretches of beach, and a diversity of creatures that can be found swimming or slithering or soaring around the island. The memory of reaching the island that first day will be with me for a long time. We spent the first 2 hours or so unloading all our gear off the boat. Then we had to help set up base camp. It didn't take long for me to begin questioning why I was there. It was hot, it was barren, and really a little scary. Although I didn't want to admit defeat after only a few hours there, I kept wondering what I'd do for 7 days on this island with a group of people I didn't know well at all. I was pretty miserable for the first day or two. Then, on the second night, a huge thunderstorm blew up over the Mississippi Sound. I took refuge in my shelter, and at that moment it hit me that all that separated me from this monster of a storm was a thin layer of nylon and some fiberglass poles. The rain was relentless and the wind was blowing so hard I was literally having to push the tent off my face, and huge bolts of lightning and the instantaneous thunder every few seconds were seemingly right on top of me. I experienced a sense of fear and dread that I've only had a few times in my life. When the sun rose that next morning, a sense of calm had replaced my fear. I had made it through the night. Any doubts I had were suddenly gone, and I realized that nature plays by her own rules and doesn't acknowledge whatever measure of control we humans believe we possess. Once I had accepted nature as my guide here on the island, my days were filled with an enormous sense of wonder and exploration. I spent hours writing in my journal, hoping to capture the essence of my experience. If Horn Island has a song, it is surely a waltz, played on an old upright piano in a room of a forgotten house. I wrote those lines while I was searching for a reason to go back to Horn Island. It's easy to have a reason to go for the first time, mainly the luxury of making it fit neatly into one's personal and most likely romanticized idea of an adventure on an isolated island. The months of planning and anticipation, buying camping gear, the not knowing. But once you've done it, you know the ropes and you know what to expect, and it becomes more a question of why do it again. I guess the simple answer is the stark beauty of the place. The dunes, the pine trees, the live oaks, the marsh grasses along the lagoons, the incessant wind, and the sometimes cruel sun. But even more than the land and sea and sky, I realize it's the people who draw me back. The stories told on sweltering afternoons under our flapping parachute shelter, the sharing of lukewarm water with a new friend as you trudge along the beach miles from camp, washing dishes at the edge of the water in the losing daylight, or just lying in a tent listening to the symphony of night noises. It's all of those things and more, an almost indescribable sense of calm and serenity when you finally let go of all those things that define you in everyday life. And once you're in that place, the world reveals itself constantly, not in magnificent ways, but in more subtle and meaningful fashion. One morning, I was walking along the beach, following an injured stingray that was swimming slowly at the water's edge. It wasn't a big fish, but it had a sizable chunk of flesh missing from its side. Probably a sand shark had taken a quick lunge at the ray and dealt this not quite fatal wound. But still the fish swam along, and I wondered if there's any sense of mercy in nature, any sense of fairness. But just as quickly I realized that what I thought about it really didn't matter at all. Nature just is. The cycle of life and death, of wind and waves and sunlight and darkness, continue on Horn Island without cease, every day, all day long, whether we're here or not, even at this very moment. We're here on Horn Island, following in the footsteps of Walter Anderson, the now famous artist who made this his home and really his studio for weeks on end during the 40s, 50s, and 60s. Rowing across from the mainland in his little skiff, he must have been an odd sight, and I sometimes find myself squinting across the vastness as if I might catch a glimpse of a lone man pulling his oars against the swells. I imagine him walking the beach, searching intently for shells or pieces of driftwood, or sitting by his campfire in the quiet of the evening, sketching the worlds he had visited that day. The animals, the seabirds, the woods and lagoons. His paintings capture the essence of the island in all its cruel beauty and unflinching honesty. This was his Eden. Anderson was an extremely private man. He had very little contact with his community and was seen as an oddball, really an outsider. For the most part, the people of Ocean Springs never understood his immense talent or his almost fanatic need to live apart from them, populating his world with the animals from the forest and the seashore. He most certainly suffered from what is now known as bipolar disorder. At some point in his life, after having been institutionalized several times, I think he must have realized that he did not need the company of people. In what seems to be the ultimate irony, we have more knowledge about the day-to-day life of Walter Anderson than almost any other 20th century artist. From the mid-1940s up until the time of his death in 1965, Anderson made regular entries into his journal, giving us a rare glimpse into the mind of the artist. These surviving pages from his logs have been collected in a fascinating book entitled The Horn Island Logs of Walter Inglis Anderson. The entries are a study in honesty and portray Anderson's incredible sense of wonder and curiosity in the world around him. April 19th, 1944. I arose at dawn. There was one star in the east, and I saw my friend, the red-winged blackbird, fly by showing his epaulets. I put the skiff in the water, and after breakfast of coffee, rice, and fish, I went out in the boat and with the north wind drifted along the rows of pelicans, going swimming at intervals. I went ashore on the strip of Long Beach and turned the boat up on its side, made a shady place for sketching. I drew until about 1, taking baths occasionally, and then had lunch and wrote up the log. 1950. I left on the day before Easter with a westerly wind. Man apparently lives the life of some sort of draft animal as soon as he begins to work. Put his back into it, he feels the traces tighten. The world begins to breathe again. The chariot of the sun is once again in motion, only it isn't a chariot at all. It's the terrible truck of doom, and it is drawn by its servants and rolls over the defenseless bodies of its victims. Amidst the howling of these, it pursues its triumphal way. But I digress. The sky was spotlessly clear. Not even one little puff of white cloud marred the marvelous blue. But apparently, wind needs clouds, a raison d'etre, an excuse for blowing, and alas, I was not enough. Monday. Almost the first thing I saw when I looked out over the water was a black dot, the scooter, holding the same place from which I had driven him. But the first black thing was a large cottonmouth moccasin coiled up among the food sacks. It was still too dark to see him until he wiggle-waggled away, which he obligingly did, as I was about to reach down for a jar of peanut butter. How many times have I not been bitten by snakes? Times beyond counting, I expect. June 25th, 1965. This morning is cloudy, and there is an exhausted feeling in the heavens which seem to say, "We have done all we could for you. We have given you rain for your crops. You must allow us to rest for a while. We have given you all we could, but Horn Island is as dry as a bleached bone. Not that it really needs rain. Everything is green and growing. What wind there is south." When Anderson withdrew from the seemingly impossible confines of social interaction with his family and the community, his world became focused on two places, Horn Island and the tiny cottage behind his family's home. The island offered limitless possibilities, and the cottage became his refuge when he couldn't be on the island, and ultimately his canvas. He put a padlock on the front door of the cottage, and no one entered his sanctuary until after his death, when his wife pried the lock from the door and was stunned by the beauty of what she found. Anderson had recreated the magnificence of Horn Island on the very walls of his cottage. This magnificent room and more than 550 of Anderson's works are housed in the Walter Anderson Museum of Art in Ocean Springs, Mississippi. Under our shelters and at the evening meal, we gravitate to comfortable friends and conversation, and I think everyone senses the importance of what we're doing. I think about the many people who have come here over the years and realize that there must be a couple of hundred students who've called this place home for 7 days and 7 nights. People who now hold a part of this island as their own. This is a comforting thought. One morning, Jill and Suzanne asked me to show them the way to the lagoon, and as we walked along the reed-choked edge, I watched as they overcame a moment of doubt and fear before diving into the still, dark waters, surely knowing of the snakes, the alligators, and who knows what else. It was a liberating moment for them as they swam toward the middle of the lagoon, and I was happy I was there with them to share this moment of bravery, really this moment of clarity for each of them. Afterwards, they sat quietly on the bank, each in their private reverie, in their unique way of seeing the world. As they began to put paint to paper, I knew that they wanted to freeze this moment or document this place to somehow make it last forever. Because no matter what they paint or see from this moment on, it's a part of who they are. I'm intrigued by the metalsmiths and the way they see something in a sheet of copper. The hard work of beating, prodding, and pulling the image out of the metal, working it while it's glowing red hot, then dunking it in the seawater and watching how it changes as it hardens. This is yet another metaphor for our lives. We start out as a blank sheet, then with much prodding and pulling from every imaginable direction, the occasional searing by fire, and the periodic immersion in the cleansing water, we emerge, soft and pliable, into the outline of who we become. The key is finding the proper balance. Who knows? I realize that I like artists and actively seek their company, hoping that somehow their vision will rub off on me and bring the world into sharper focus or answer some fundamental question that eludes me. I watch their eyes, the quick glances to the horizon, and then the intense study of the paint as it brushes the paper, splaying as it follows and fills the tiny rivulets of the paper fibers. This is what being an artist is all about, seeing the unseen and presenting the ordinary as something fresh and singular. As much as I enjoy the company of these artists, I find that I need to wander on my own. You see, my canvas is videotape, and I take 30 separate pictures each and every second. That's 1,800 frames each minute, and over 100,000 on a tape that's not much bigger than a book of matches. Although I don't feel as if I really own these images, I know them. They are a part of my vision, my unique view of the world. I feel almost embarrassed that I can come away with more than 1 million images of this place, all on little tapes that would fit in the palm of my hand. Morning is the perfect time to go off by myself. The sun rises low over the sound, throwing millions of copper reflections on the water. I sit sometimes for an hour or more, looking through my binoculars or through the viewfinder of the camera, watching life move through the frame. I don't feel the need to zoom or even move the camera in any direction. The world moves through the frame with more grace and subtlety than I could ever try to plan or recreate. Nature is in charge here, and we are mere guests in the best sense, and interlopers at the worst. On my visits to the ocean side of the island, where the students are encamped, I find that most everyone has found their own way of dealing with the passing of time, the harshness of the sun and wind, and the lack of comforts they're surely accustomed to. I watch as they work and play and discover, and I wonder how I would have dealt with this experience at 19 or 20. I've gradually gained the trust of the students, and they welcome my questions and intrusions with the video camera. I come away thinking that they are far beyond where I was at that age. The students sketch and photograph and write in their journals, and I wonder how these simple drawings and thoughts will manifest themselves once we return to Memphis. Will the tug of their everyday lives relegate this experience to some dreamlike memory, or will it change them? Will it make them grow as artists and human beings? I hope some of these images and encounters with nature at its most base level will imprint themselves so strongly that the mere thought of them will bring back the exact vision and feeling of being on the island. Much later, I visit several of the artists in their homes and studios. These are people I've gotten to know within the fairly narrow confines of our shared Horn Island experience. The first thing that strikes me is the degree of passion and utter joy with which all of these people approach their work. There's a strong sense of accomplishment from the artist that surely springs from the initial idea or sketch that has been nurtured and now fully realized into something tangible and permanent. The short-term goal is to have a body of work that can be shown at the Horn Island exhibit, which the Memphis College of Art holds every year in August. Just 3 months removed from Horn Island, I see that the artists have remained true to the course by producing work that embodies this very personal experience. On my visits, I see that many of the artists have kept their creations, maybe as a touchstone or reminder of how shimmering the waves were, or how sunlight filtered through the nylon of a tent, or maybe how a quiet conversation changed a view or produced a laugh, or maybe opened a mind a little wider. This experience has manifested itself in some very personal expressions that will endure. A friend of mine says, "Life is short, but it's wide." I think I understand a little better now. As I watched the students trudge back across the island one evening after supper, I realized that we all have our paths in life, and soon we'll scatter like the grains of sand on this beach. But for now, we're here together, for this brief time, sharing a common experience, something we'll hold forever. And it doesn't matter what age or level of experience, we're all equal here, basic in our needs, and whether we know it or not, we're all heading to the same place. Horn Island has a song, and it plays in the hearts of the many artists who've called it home, just as Walter Anderson did. It is a song of hope, of sadness, of light and darkness, of wind and water, of the stillness of the wood and the roar of the marsh reeds. It is the sound of life and a new beginning with each sunrise, and a call of despair in the setting sun and darkness. It's another adventure I'll add to my experience and carry along on my journey. It is life.